lie awake, and then you give me the lights of day, because the children with you can play.
So the desert is defined by the amount of rainfall that it receives each year. Aridity also adds to the definition of what makes a desert a desert. The plants in the desert lose a lot of water throughout the year due to the aridity and the sunlight. So this also helps to define the desert better. Due to the temperature changes in the desert, the temperatures can range from very high to very low. Low being in the night and very high being during the day. And the desert soils also tend to be coarse, so sand obviously tends to be coarse.
Desert biomes are often categorized as sort of being empty, barren wastelands that is ridden with ghost towns like in old western movies. Although it's quite the contrary, as deserts are home to 1/6 of the world's population and 1/5 of the world's landmass. They provide plenty of real estate for societies to grow. Irrigation plays a vital part when living in a desert in order to have access to adequate amount of water.
Most, if not all, the metals that we use today on a daily basis are found in the desert. So the structures that we use to create buildings and the structures and the metals that go into your cars, most of them are always found in the desert. Oil is also one of the larger prospects that deserts produce, as 75% of the oil that we use today comes from deserts. So the arid climate is also good for helping us humans find preserved artifacts. So for instance, mummies in Egypt, a huge part of us being able to find the remains and artifacts of past civilizations is that we get to learn about the societies of back then and overall just understand more about our history. So the desert environment, there's plenty of animals that have adapted to the harsh climates, both hot and cold, but we'll get to that later.
If you look at the importance of deserts on a large scale, they are known to be carbon dioxide sinks. This basically means that carbon dioxide is stored within the ground and in many ways contributes to the issue of global warming. There are 4 major types of deserts: hot and dry, semi-arid, coastal, and cold. Hot and dry deserts are generally warm all year and get very hot during the summertime. The majority of rainfall, if any, occurs during the wintertime. Also receive twice the solar radiation by humid regions, while also losing twice as much heat at night.
Semi-arid deserts are found in Utah, Montana, and the Great Basin. The summers in these deserts tend to be moderately long, but the winters tend to be moderately short. The summers are moderately long, while the winters tend to bring a small amount of rainfall. The cooler nights during the winter tend to be better for the plants, as it reduces the amount of transpiration that happens in the plants during the hotter season.
Coastal deserts are found in the Arctic and neotropical areas, like the Atacama Desert in Chile. Cool winters in these deserts are followed by moderately long, warm summers.
So cold deserts tend to be characterized by snowfall, which is very odd for typical deserts. Along with this, we also get more rainfall during the summer seasons and the spring. Winters are a little bit different here in the cold deserts, as the winters tend to be a little bit longer than the summers are, and the summers tend to be moist and not as hot as all the other deserts we covered so far. They also tend to have their own special set of vegetation. Along with that, they also have their own special set of invertebrate and vertebrate animals.
There aren't very many mammals in the desert due to their inability to store sufficient water and withstand heat. This would also serve to explain why humans don't occupy more of the desert. Deserts are barren areas that on average receive less than 10 inches of rainfall per year. While one may assume that the world's deserts are mostly sand, sand typically covers about 20% of a desert surface. About 50% are plains covered in loose gravel. The remaining surface is made of fluvial deposits, outcrops, playas, lakes, and oases. Despite the low moisture levels, deserts are prone to flash floods when they receive rain.
There are 4 main causes to how deserts form. The first one being that air rises at the equator and cools. The resulting condensation at the end of the equator results in rain. So this causes the dry, cool air to sink and end up becoming warm. Since warm air can hold more water, it evaporates the land and results in the formation of deserts. So then secondly there's the rain shadow effect. So what happens here is warm air rises over a mountain, then that cool air holds less water, so what happens is rain starts to come down. The cool air then dries as it crosses over the mountain, and this results in deserts forming on the other side of that mountain. Cause number 3, deserts may tend to form in inland areas due to their distance away from the ocean, and as deserts are there, these areas tend to be much drier around the ocean. Deserts found along the western edge of continents are caused by cold ocean currents cooling the air approaching the continent. The cooler air then condenses when it reaches the land, and then when it picks up again it tends to turn warm. The warm air then evaporates in the area around it, forming the desert in that spot.
Some deserts have low salt concentrations because of the lack of rainfall and no subsurface water. Moisture sometimes makes the desert actually good for living conditions. In addition, the lack of moisture is beneficial to those who are suffering from arthritis. The moisture helps cause less mold, with mold being a major cause of respiratory infection.
The lack of population density in deserts helps with the air pollution. The less people, the less air pollution like we get in cities like Los Angeles and other industrialized cities like that.
Otherwise, it is a valuable natural defense, as many people tend not to live in deserts, leaving a long barrier between some nations.
Due to the fluctuating size of the deserts, it's very tough to usually be able to pinpoint where a desert ends and where it begins. Like a lot of things, with temperature change comes contraction. So when a desert gets hot or cold, it begins to contract in size, and it changes very often. As academic research written by Troy Sternberg, Ernie Ruff, and Nick Middleton from Oxford University, titled Contradiction of the Gobi Desert, 2000 to 2012. It aims to provide a more accurate measurement of one of Asia's major deserts, the highly dynamic Gobi Desert. In addition, there have been conflicting reports on human interaction with the Gobi Desert. So with that said, this research not only tackles whether the environment is making the desert fluctuate or whether it's also human interaction that's changing the way the desert contracts and expands. The results of the study basically show that there was a decreasing size in the area of the desert, with an 18% variance over the study period. The desert peaked in 2002 with a 2.5 million kilometers square area and decreased in size to 2.8 million kilometers squared in 2012. The boundaries fluctuated approximately 5% per year. Due to the desert's high variability, the study concluded that establishing its boundaries tend to be approximate rather than definitive.
Plants and animals that live in the desert have adapted to survive in extreme temperatures and very little water. There are a number of ways plants have adapted to living in the desert. Many plants have altered their physical structure in order to store and conserve more water. The most obvious example, the cactus, have developed their stem to be able to store a large amount of water. They usually have short or no leaves at all, which reduces transpiration. Another physical adaptation is having a waxy texture on their leaves. Agave plants, for example, have waxy leaves that prevent moisture from escaping. Cacti and most other succulent plants have shallow roots so that they receive water faster when it rains. However, some plants, such as mesquite and acacia trees, have long taproot systems that get water from aquifers deep underground. Some perennial plants remain dormant until water becomes readily available. An example of this is the ocotillo. Common desert mammals include camels, elephants, coyotes, and hyenas. Birds that can be found in the desert include the vulture, roadrunners, and ospreys. Smaller animals such as snakes, scorpions, and rodents burrow underneath the ground to avoid the heat.
Humans have impacted the desert in a lot of ways, and mostly negatively. For instance, mining water out of the desert's reservoirs tends to dry out the land more than it already is, so this leaves even less moisture for the plants that already don't have much. Well, this is a proposed water pump that would pump water out of the Mojave Desert and bring it into the California cities. This, as mentioned earlier, would dry out the plants and the animals that live in the area, so less moisture already for those who don't have a lot of moisture to begin with. Similar to the pipeline that would pump the water from the Mojave Desert and into the California cities, there's also the issue of gas pumps and other water pumps, along with different pipes that would run underground, All these different pipings make the ground of the desert unstable. The desert also provides a lot of space for military weapons testing, but the downside with that is that a lot of the weapons tested in deserts happen to be nuclear weapons. So this makes the ground pretty radioactive and pretty much useless to any plants or animals living on it. Another huge interaction that ruins deserts is driving off-road. And probably one of the bigger ones is global warming. Now, global warming can affect temperatures a little or a lot, but even those tiny tweaks in temperature can affect the animals and the plants of the environment and could even kill some of them. And the last one is gold mining. Gold mining uses a chemical known as potassium cyanide, which can poison the wildlife.
Much of the world's fossil fuels are found in the desert, especially in the Middle East. This means that deserts are a major source of oil and gas. Valuable mineral resources are abundant in the dry lands of the desert. These include gold, silver, copper, and iron. The desert is popular for tourism and recreation. People often go to deserts to see the vast landscape and unique rock formations. They are also used for recreational purposes like hiking, rock climbing, and off-road vehicles.
I